Hello and welcome to Green Pass Gaming Sunday podcast. I am your host Flap, and tonight we have gathered the entire GPG crew for your listening pleasure. And tonight we're going to be going through some pretty cool topics that have kind of happened over the last week, and perhaps a little bit beyond, because we didn't have a live show last week, sadly. But, life gets in the way sometimes. We're all very busy people, but we do really enjoy coming back to doing this show. And here we are again. So hopefully we'll be able to put on a good show that everyone enjoys. And it's covering some pretty cool topics. I'll just have a very quick rundown of the topics for tonight's show. So it was obviously announced this week that the Game Pass, well, the targets that Xbox had set for Game Pass didn't quite come to fruition. So we'll be looking into that just to see, because obviously Microsoft has still got some big games yet to come, particularly in the next couple of months. So it'll be interesting to see if we think that's going to bring Game Pass back on track. And having such a fantastic year as they have, it'd just be interesting to have a look at some of the Game of the Year contenders and what we think's probably a real strong possibility for some of the Game of the Year contenders, not necessarily winning it, but what Microsoft and Xbox are going to throw their hats in the ring on what games are going to be in there. We'll also be touching on the 20th anniversary celebrations that's happening on November the 15th. And one last one, that strange and weird Fable tweet that came out. We'll be delving into that a little bit as well. But before we get into any of those great things, I'd like to welcome the GPG crew and the rest of the panel. And first up, pretty much as always, my wingman Puxley. How the devil are you, sir? What have you been up to?
Evening, Flap. Evening, everybody. Yes, I'm doing very well, thank you. I think, as you said at the beginning, it's unfortunately wasn't around last week. I was away on holiday throughout the week, so I've been a bit behind on gaming news. I've been slowly catching up. I think the most recent thing that got me quite excited later in the week was the GTA trilogy reveal. I know the panel have some mixed opinions on GTA in general, but I very much was excited to see it, and maybe we'll talk about it in a bit more detail later on. So gaming-wise, again, because I have been away, I've not been playing too much. Before I did go away, I was playing a lot of Metroid Dread, which I did finish just before I went away. I know yesterday, yourself and we both played some more Hell Let Loose, which is always good fun.
Yeah.
And I also, last night, as well as a bit this morning, I also started playing The Last of Us Part 2 on PlayStation 4 as well.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm quite enjoying it so far. So that's basically all I've got for you for now.
Okay, well, first half of that game's fantastic. It's the second bit that lets me down, but we won't get into that because I know Luke likes it very much. Perhaps we'll have that discussion offline. Scott, welcome to the show, my friend. Busy week? What you been up to?
Yeah, well, a busy week in a good way. I mean, the missus had a week off work, which has been nice. Because it's been rather busy. Not too much time to play too many games, mainly because we didn't go anywhere, but we've been having day trips out. It's just been nice to relax. But I have been playing a fair bit of Scarlet Nexus and Back for Blood this week, which has been nice. I'm right at the end of Scarlet Nexus. I think I'm probably about a corridor away from the final boss. I get the feeling at the moment. And then Back for Blood, I've actually completed sort of the first run through on the easiest difficulty, which is Rookie, I think it is. And that's actually surprised me. I've enjoyed that a lot more than I expected, to be honest. So other than that, that's kind of been my week for games. But looking forward to getting into tonight's topics.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, and without any further ado, Luke, let's come to you next, my friend. How are you? And what have you been up to this week? Busy gaming week or not?
Not particularly busy. Work and other stuff getting in the way of that. But I have played some bits and pieces. So, like Puxley, I've been playing a lot of Metroid Dread, which is fantastic. Cool. Just really, really, really good. And some Deathloop on PC, which is also very, very good. I have also been playing a bit of Back for Blood, not too much, but I'm quite enjoying it actually. It's it's just Left 4 Dead, but that's a good thing, really, because we need stuff like that, and it's kind of well overdue. So bits and pieces here and there, not as much as I'd like, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to really get into stuff, particularly before next month and the month after when Forza and Halo launch. So I'd like to try and get through as much as possible before.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and we'll probably be covering that in our first topic. Actually, what's still yet to come. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Trying to burn through some of these games before some of the real big hitters kind of land. And to be honest, let's face it, the first half of next year or the first few months of next year are pretty hot as well. Particularly February. I think there's quite a few games that got pushed back to February. So February's going to be a hot month, which is unusual because going back a few years, the January, February, March have always been pretty slow. But yeah, excellent. Well, I've been playing quite a few games, I guess. I had a dabble in Enlisted, which is another World War II kind of simulator. It's free, but heavily kind of monetized once you're in there. It's all kind of cosmetic stuff, but yeah, I wasn't so keen on that. As Puck's mentioned, still playing Hell Let Loose. That's out of the two, Hell Let Loose is the proper World War II battle simulator, and it is still as terrifying as it was the day that I first played it. Absolutely love that. Been playing Into the Pit as well. I don't know if anyone else has been playing that.
Nice.
Yeah.
How you find that? Sorry, Flap.
I really like it.
I've got it downloaded, ready to play.
Right.
I'm just a one at a time kind of guy, so I'll have to wait until I've done.
It's not.
Nexus, but
it's a roguelike game, so you keep going round and round and further into the pit, as it were. But yeah, it's kind of a Doom clone, I guess, kind of a lower quality version Doom clone. It's quite fast paced and stuff, but to mix that with a roguelike type aspects, no, I really enjoy it actually. So I'm having lots of fun with that. I've got to the bottom of the second pit, which is the second boss. I don't know how many there are in total, to be honest. And also been playing this game, Echo Generation. Absolutely fantastic game. I really enjoy playing this game. It's so much fun. So it's on Gamepass, as is Into the Pit. They were launched this week, and I highly recommend these if you're struggling for games to play, which I very much doubt. But if you've got a few spare hours, check them out. Excellent. Well, chat. Let's move to you first, chat. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Love the chat, getting involved in the show. If there's anything you want to ask, or if you want to even lob a grenade in, please feel free. Let's just do a very quick roll call. Myseko, Judzilla, Back from the Dead was here. Pyro M, I know Bullman Gamer will be joining later, and Indy as well. So fantastic. Well, let's crack on with topic number one, shall we? And perhaps we'll come to you first, if that's all right, Scott. So I think it was this week, actually. I've got to be honest, I've been working a lot this week, so I've not been able to keep up with the gaming news like I normally do. But I believe it was this week, and I think there was some figures published, wasn't there, that Game Pass hadn't quite met the targets that Xbox were hoping for. I think it was a rolling 12-month period, I believe, that ended in June 2021. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think their aims was for 47.7% growth, and I think they reached 37.5% growth. Is that your understanding of the situation, Scott?
Yeah, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Flap.
Yeah,
even down to the exact percentile as well. So, and it was the sort of 12 months ending June 30th earlier this year. So, it's an interesting one because I think a lot of people have really ran with this argument over the past week or so, and there's been almost a little bit of like, oh, is Game Pass not working? Has it slowed down? Have they hit the heights? Which is interesting. I think probably the one thing that's really important for us to stress when we talk about this is it wasn't necessarily growth targets for Xbox necessarily. It was specifically, I believe, I guess targets for executive what's the word, like bonus, rather than sort of any internal Xbox growth metrics that they were trying to hit, which I think for a lot of people, myself included, it was kind of the first time I'd really ever taken notice of this sort of thing. And it's probably also worth mentioning, that these are typically fairly high or hard to hit targets because they're linked directly to sort of a bonus incentive for shareholders and executives at Microsoft, and they have similar targets for the likes of Microsoft Teams and things like that, which also didn't quite hit. So it is interesting because a lot of people have, like I say, sort of reacted to the news negatively, despite it probably being like myself the first time they even knew that these sorts of targets existed. But at the same time, it is still a 38, almost 40% growth year on year, which is I imagine they're still pleased with. Obviously, it's not the same growth that they'd seen the previous year, which I think was sort of in the 80% mark. But obviously, it is going to slow down over time as the number of subscribers goes up. They've got I guess, a finite user base at the moment as they still roll out sort of cloud to various markets as well. So it is inevitably going to slow. You're not going to see 80% growth every single year on year. But it is sort of interesting to see because it kind of gives us an idea of how many subscribers they've got, which, if you remember the Take-Two CEO on, I think it was Yahoo, if I remember correctly, in an interview with Phil Spencer, he kind of maybe indicated that there was 30 million subscribers at Game Pass, but some smarter people than me have been able to work out that seemingly as of June is probably more around 20 million subscribers at the moment. I think the last published figure that Microsoft had was 18 million back in January of this year. So it does kind of show a slow in growth. They were previously hitting around 1 million new subscribers each month based on the figures that they had previously released, and that obviously has slowed somewhat since then, which I think is understandable. And I expect we'll see, and they will probably expect to see the growth sort of pick up. We're going to talk about them just a little bit later on the show, but obviously they've got a couple of big games coming out later this year that I imagine might lead to a spike in subscribers.
No, absolutely. And like you say, 40% growth is still pretty damn phenomenal, to be honest. And, there's always elements that will stick any negative spin on any story or news that they can put out there. And I think had Microsoft not said, actually, our target was nearly 50%, but we kind of just dipped under 40. Had they just said, 40% growth, I think people would have thought, oh, wow, that's pretty damn phenomenal. Luke, what was your take on this particular story? Because, 40% growth is still pretty impressive. And like Scott says, there's always going to be a slowing down of subscribers. You're going to have a lot of uptake early on. And then there's going to be an element of kind of trickle feeding as time goes on. Was you surprised by this? Did you think it was quite a harsh target they'd set themselves?
I don't think I was surprised. I don't think it's a particularly harsh target. But I think, maybe it is to some extent because, Game Pass has been doing really well since the start of the year in particular. But if you look at that period, I mean, there's a lot of really cool games that's come to the service. But I don't think any of them you would consider like big hitters, big first party hitters, the kind that will attract a broader audience to, push themselves into Game Pass. Some really, really good games like Psychonauts 2, for example, and obviously Flight Sim came to the consoles as well. But their big games are still to come. So I think in that context, the growth that they've had is very impressive. And it's only going to accelerate as they start releasing things like Halo and Forza and beyond that Bethesda games and all of the stuff that they've got coming. So I mean it's not a negative because it's still really high growth. It's less than they wanted, but there's always going to be peaks and troughs in any of this, and particularly when the content isn't your massive first party games, right? It's a lot of the smaller stuff or third party stuff, and in that context it's all quite impressive. So it keeps going from strength to strength. It's probably a very small blip. I don't think they'll be that concerned about it. I think if you got the numbers after Halo and Forza release, I think they'll be very impressive.
Yeah, no, that's and to be honest, that's kind of part of the crux of this, I guess, and perhaps we'll come to you with this one then, Pucks. We've still got two massive Xbox titles yet to come. I mean, where are we? 24th of October, and we've still yet, 2 titles yet to come. Massive first party, obviously in the shape of Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite. Do you think there will be enough to sort of kickstart the Game Pass subscriptions again and get people back involved? Do you think people are actually waiting for these games before they jump on board?
Quite possibly, I think. But I also think that's mainly from like the more hardcore gamers' perspective of that the kind of gamer who is aware that these services exist, what they are, and know what kind of games are coming out. I know we've discussed it on previous shows as well, quite a number of times. Microsoft have had a massive advertising, I suppose, campaign for Game Pass and trying to put it in front of the unknowing gamer's eye, I guess. We're talking families, maybe young children, teens, whatever else, who may not have heard of these services or just aren't quite sure what they are. And I think, in a way, Microsoft are still, or Xbox, whatever, are still going to have that struggle or just a lot of time required to keep pushing that agenda, to keep putting it under people's noses, keeps telling people what it is, what it's all about, and what you get for it. I definitely think Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite coming out is going to really help push that, I think, especially when you consider that, you buy those 2 games individually, that's about 140 quid, assuming they're both £70 each. And Game Pass for a whole year's £120, I believe, or something like that overall, and you get every other title under the sun, including those. So I think once people understand what that is, what you get, and everything else that comes in the future, I'd like to believe that's what will help entice people. But at the same time, I guess we're also still in the middle of a global component shortage. It's a number of territories across the globe are still having issues, getting Xboxes or PlayStations, whatever else. It's hard to get all sorts of electronic devices at the moment. So as well as trying to get gamers, hardcore or otherwise, under the guise and understanding what Game Pass is, I still think Microsoft have the challenge of just putting Xboxes in front of people. And I say that because even though, yes, Game Pass is cross-platform, you can play it on PC or whatever, or mobile, whatever else. I do agree, and we've said again on multiple shows in the past that Game Pass in other territories where things are costly and expensive for electronic devices, mobile is, if it's the only option, it's a great option, but it's not. It's far from ideal. I think we've all mentioned in the past, and that's still the case now. Even if you connect a controller to your phone or whatever, it's still far from ideal to really properly experience these new titles coming out. And from the PC market perspective, I think the types of people that are going to have the rigs that can support these games are the hardcore gamers anyway, and not your average Joe, which has just got some 300 quid laptop, because unless you do stream it, I mean, it's a better option when it comes to streaming, but I suppose in a way you still have the same issues of, if you're not completely into your tech and stuff, you may not have the fastest broadband packages or things like that. So I suppose my point being, there's so many factors at play that I think it's too early still in the life cycle, I think, for Microsoft to obviously see that growth. But again, we're not even a year into the new life cycle yet, so I think maybe give it another two or so years. I'd like to think that by then they'll start seeing a lot more positive growth.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, I've still got friends, colleagues, and stuff that have an Xbox that still don't know what Game Pass is, and that it disappoints me so much. Scott, I don't know if you're in a similar sort of position where you've got sort of friends that have an Xbox and they don't really know what Game Pass is. I'm still not convinced Xbox are really pushing this service as hard as they possibly could, particularly with advertising on TV and billboards and stuff like that. Yeah. What do you think?
It's wild that you say that, Flat, because I don't know a single person who has an Xbox who doesn't have Game Pass. So I'm quite in. But the thing is, part of it is because I've pushed it to them as well. I've made them aware, and I think you've hit the nail on the head again there, Flap. I think part of the problem is advertising. Now, I personally don't watch an awful lot of TV, so I can't comment too much on sort of the advertisement push that Xbox has. I have seen comments in the community where people have compared the marketing strategies of Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox. And I mean, just today, I barely watch any TV. I was watching. I think it was when I was watching the football earlier today, I saw a Switch OLED and Metroid Dread advert, which is I can't remember if I've ever seen an Xbox advert on TV, even when I watch TV, or it's been a long time since I've seen it. PlayStation obviously very heavily involved here in Europe in the Champions League, which is a fairly huge advertisement deal, I imagine, for them. So it is interesting, because it does appear to be that a lot of it does come from word of mouth, people telling their friends. But even on the Xbox dashboard themselves, I believe they push Game Pass as well. So I guess it just depends on sort of where they're targeting users at the moment. Are they targeting existing Xbox owners through sort of advertisements on the Xbox itself and trying to get them to try it out? They've obviously, I believe they still do heavily push the sort of £1 for your first month of Game Pass, or whether they're trying to bring new users in. And I think Puck's made a really good point, which is if they're trying to target new users coming into the Xbox ecosystem at the moment, obviously they're still struggling to get consoles out, which I guess is going to hamper their ability to bring new users in who are going to buy an Xbox and Game Pass at the same time. And obviously they do have the cloud side of Game Pass Ultimate, but I certainly think the number of people at this moment in time, at least, who are going to subscribe to Game Pass only for the cloud option, I think they're going to be few and far between. I don't think it's quite there just yet. Obviously, it's limited in what devices you can actually use it on. It's limited in what regions it's available on, and I don't think the service is quite there for me. I think it's great at the moment as like a complementary service to go alongside an Xbox, but in my experience, it's not something that I'd like to use as my only method of playing Xbox games. But it's only recently come out of beta on PC, where you can actually play through the Xbox app now. That's a very recent update, so maybe we'll start seeing that sort of growth in that area over the coming months. I think it was very recently just released in Australia, Japan, Brazil, Mexico. That was, I think, literally just last month, if I remember correctly, as well. Brazil in particular, I think the hardware costs in Brazil are extortionate due to taxes over there. So maybe that's an area where they'll see growth. And obviously the Asian market, with Japan getting Game Pass, xCloud specifically, is likely to be an area of interest for them as well. So yeah, the advertisement thing is interesting, because if you spend money on advertising now, but that person then can't go to the shop and pick up an Xbox, is that wasted money? Probably not, but it's maybe they're just trying to focus their efforts elsewhere while they sort of ride this shortage, if that makes sense.
I guess so, but one of the strengths with Game Pass is they've cast their net pretty wide. So like Pugs was saying, you can actually stream on a PC, even if it's not a top end or cutting edge PC, and also your phone and stuff. Yeah. So like I say, they have cast their net pretty wide to hopefully catch as many people as they can. So yeah, I still think they should be able to push it, to be honest. But it's interesting. Luke, do you think this was just a sort of an aspirational target, or do you think it was a forecast that they made? Because obviously, if it's a forecast when it comes to numbers like this, I'm guessing there could be a financial kind of element to it. And obviously, if they don't keep hitting their sort of forecast or their targets, then perhaps they might have to potentially start slowing up financially. Do you think that's a thing, or is that, do you think Microsoft have backed this so much that they're just going to continue to pile money in?
Yeah, I think it probably was a forecast, rather than just we're going to pick out the target and aim for it. But I don't think it's going to impact on the budget of the Xbox division per se. I don't think that really makes much of a difference. Obviously, if it was in negative subscribers, negative growth, as it for an oxymoronical term, then probably that might start to impact stuff. But it's still growing significantly, so I don't think missing a forecast by 10% is that much of a big deal. And also, I think the thing with all of this is that it's a long-term plan. It's not it's not. We don't know if it's how profitable it is at the moment. We don't know. We probably will never know, or we'll only know in the far future. But they're still in the kind of growth stage. So they're still in trying to build up that base of consistent people who will remain subscribed no matter what. And they're doing a really good job of it. So, and that's only going to get better for them as they really get going on their first party stuff, which kind of starts next month, essentially. So I think they're fine, and they won't be too concerned about missing a forecast by really a relatively small amount.
It's interesting you say that their first party pretty much starts next month, because obviously we've had Psychonauts and we've had Flight Sim and stuff, obviously from a console launch point of view. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think November onwards is sort of double down time, isn't it? Where the big hitters are coming in, and I'm hoping that, like you say, if it was a forecast like that, then they've got Forza Horizon 5 and Halo in their back pocket. It'd just be interesting to see what their forecast was going to be over the 12-month period that obviously covered the launch of those two games as well, and just to see what they thought the increase was going to be. Be really interesting to know the numbers, Pucks. Like Luke was saying, I don't know if we'll absolutely know the numbers, and that 30 million leak is a little bit of an awkward one now for Microsoft, isn't it? Because they can't come out and say, well, actually it's 20 million, because it looks like some kind of insider's got it wrong. It's almost like they can't announce the numbers until they've actually hit 30 million and beyond. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I do get that. I suppose, because if people are thinking 30 million, I mean, 30 million is, a pretty good number to have, again, this early in the life cycle of Xbox.
But if it's actually only 20 or 22, then all of a sudden it looks bad again when it's still not. Do you know what I mean? It's still growth, but compared to the 30 million, it looks bad all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. And I suppose given how bad the console wars can be on throughout the socials, I imagine Microsoft just probably want to get away from just avoiding all that entirely by just not announcing the numbers.
Yeah,
well, that was rumored to be why they didn't announce numbers during the last results, because if I remember correctly, it had been rumored from the likes of Jez Corden that there was 23 million subscribers, I think, and then Jez basically turned around and said, look, the figure that I saw was 23 million, but it wasn't relating to Game Pass subscribers. And I think Jeff Grubb came out and basically said that spooked Microsoft, because if they came out after sort of that leak by Windows Central to then say, right, it's actually 20 million, then that will be viewed negatively, exactly as he's saying. They're kind of in that same position now. You're absolutely right, Flap.
Yeah, they're backed into a corner a little bit. To be honest, I don't know if it's their doing. Like I say, this information was kind of leaked, and perhaps it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't quite understand the comment of around 30 million, but it's an interesting one, and it does put Xbox in a slightly awkward position with announcing what the actual number is, like you say, if they ever actually do. But Pucks, let's catch up with the chat if we can.
Yeah, sure thing. I've got a few little comments saved. So right at the beginning of the show, as we was going through what games we've been playing, I asked the chat to let us know what they've been playing as well. And I got one here from Godzilla Music who says that their PS5 has arrived and they have finished playing God of War.
Cool.
Amazing game, they say. And Godzilla's now also playing Kenna, Bridge of Spirits, on PS5 as well. Mexico has been playing quite a big mix of things as well. He's been playing Noita, Back for Blood, Dicey Dungeons, Uncharted 1, Persona Strikers, and Days of Purgatory, which I haven't quite heard of. So quite a big mix there, actually.
Yeah, that is quite an eclectic mix. Uncharted 1, wow.
Uncharted 1, yeah. Great game.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that's from the collection, PS4 collection, I guess, or whatever it's called, Uncharted collection. Yeah, but let us know, Mexico.
Yeah.
Another comment here from Pyro, who says the difference between the 37% growth and 47% projected is down to people that are no longer still at home, now working again, reducing the available time.
Yeah, that's a valid point, to be honest.
That's quite a good point, right?
Yeah, I think Microsoft may have taken that into consideration when they were perhaps projecting, but perhaps they didn't quite understand when the end of the lockdown was going to happen, particularly globally. Obviously, locally you can have a kind of inkling, but globally it has an impact as well. But yeah, that's an interesting point, that. And perhaps they leapt forward over the last 12 months, obviously because of COVID and lockdown and stuff. And like you say, that was always going to slow down. So yeah, perhaps that's what we're starting to see now.
I think what I find most interesting of always, given this discussion, is there are so many variables at play that could be the cause of whether it's why it's the numbers that it is, whether it's COVID is still a thing, availability of consoles, people's knowledge of the services. It's so many variables. You can't really pinpoint any particular one, can you? Because they're all valid and they all have a what's the word? Like a reason. Like it could be any one of them, which is why the numbers are as they are. If that makes sense. So.
Yeah, there's many different factors, and like you say, when you're coming up with forecasts, particularly, you have to kind of try and take as many of those factors into account, particularly, like you say, if there's a financial back into that forecast. But that's interesting stuff. Well, Game Pass at the end of the day continues to grow. 40% growth is fantastic still over the last 12 months, and like you say, there are various reasons why that may have slowed, and not necessarily because the service has peaked. Like lots of the narratives wanted to take you down that particular avenue, and I don't agree that the service has peaked at all. And that kind of neatly brings us on to the next topic, really, and that's the kind of the Game of the Year contenders that Xbox have put forward this year. And again, perhaps we'll come to you first, Luke, if that's okay. Did you see the recent Digital Foundry look at Forza Horizon 5? They were very complimentary of that.
Yeah, I did. I watched that yesterday, actually. I mean, it looks great, And funnily enough, today I played Horizon 4 on PC with some friends because one of my friends coincidentally has just got Game Pass. And I recommended it as a kind of racing game for non-racing fans, which I am. I'm not really a racing game fan.
Just out of interest, were they aware of Game Pass, or did you have to make them aware of Game Pass?
No, they were aware. They were aware, but they felt that now was the time to jump in. And I was, I'm playing it on PC, everything maxed, and the difference between how that game looks and Horizon 5 is quite staggering. It kind of looks old, Horizon 4 now when you start playing it and seeing the direct feed from Digital Foundry and stuff.
The strange thing is, though, actually, you go back 6 months and you'd have thought Forza Horizon 4 was absolutely stunning and such a beautiful game, and it still is, to be fair, but like you say, in comparison,
it's still in isolation, it's lovely, but
sorry, I was going to ask you, are you comparing sort of Horizon 4 on PC directly to the footage that Digital Foundry showed off during their recent video as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, because interestingly, obviously, that was just Series X and Series S. They didn't even have the PC version, so the PC version is probably going to look even better still when you can crank everything to the high settings, especially on your rig. So which is it's mind-boggling, really, because I remember playing Horizon 4 on the One X for the first time, and although it was in 30 FPS when I played it, but I just remember how bloody great it looked. And then playing the 60 FPS mode on Series X, it was just having those unbelievable graphics, but at 60 FPS was mind blowing. And then for them to take another step up is ridiculous, really.
It's a fantastic game.
It's really impressive. Yeah. Horizon 4 is a great game, and in isolation it still looks fantastic. But yeah, against the the PC Max version, even against the Series X stuff on Horizon 5, it's they're kind of in a different league, really. So and I don't know, I'd be interested to see how much you can push it on PC, because I think the main thing will be that you'll be able to get kind of a fixed 4K at 60 or over 60 plus.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the spec requirements are actually quite high for it, but and obviously you won't have to, depending on your rig, you won't have to make the sacrifices that the Series X version does for performance mode, even though, as Digital Foundry was saying, the sacrifices they're making for those are fairly minimal. When you turn on the 60 FPS mode, I think some of the LOD changes and draw distance is lowered slightly, but it's and some of the kind of environment details are slightly toned down, but it's really not much. So it's going to be super impressive, and I fully expect it will do very well critically, because they always do. They're always great. So but yeah, Game of the Years for Xbox, I mean, really their biggest contenders, I guess, are still to come. potentially.
Well, contender, because I think, like we said, I don't think Halo's going to make it for this year, is it?
Well, no, that's very true. It will be next year, although it will have a job going up against the gamut of games that are coming out next year as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, no, I think they've had a good year, in terms of putting stuff out. It's a lot of variety, and some really good stuff as well. I mean, I'm just trying to think off the top of my. I mean, they've had Flight Sim, which is not going to be in any Game of the Year contentions because of what it is, but really cool. Psychonauts 2. I'm loath to say that's an Xbox game at the moment, just because it was on everything. But it should be a Game of the Year contender, irrespective of any of that, because it's a fantastic game.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think what else. I guess Death's Door as well.
Yeah, Age of Empires. Age of Empires.
Age of Empires, yeah. In a few days. I think, again, it will be difficult for it to, get into the Game of the Year contention. I mean, we don't know if it's actually going to be good. I suspect it should be, but...
it might get, like, best strategy.
Yeah, it could definitely
it might
get
get sort of those sorts of categories. It's interesting that you mentioned, Luke, though, obviously Psychonauts 2, because technically Deathloop is an Xbox
totally agree.
game, which is likely to be up there based on some of the conversations.
that will be
probably last year.
It will be interesting if Deathloop is Game of the Year, because it's like, how do you pitch that? Like you say, do Xbox claim a stake on that, or a PlayStation going to say, well, it's out on PlayStation? That's going to be an interesting one if that
both
takes.
of them will probably be fighting for that, isn't it? But it is,
that'll light Twitter up.
Yeah, I imagine Xbox will probably, well, of course they'll be pleased if it won. They'll obviously be immensely pleased for Bethesda, but I also think that probably helps them out next year when it does come to Xbox. They can say, this game that's won however many GOTY awards, not just maybe at the sort of the VGAs, but it's likely to win Game of the Year awards from multiple outlets. I would imagine they'll be able to say that as part of their push. Get this. GOTY in Gamepass, or buy it on Xbox. So
it's an interesting Game of the Year this year, I think. I mean, notwithstanding, let's take Forza and Halo out of the equation, because we don't know how. I'm sure they'll both be good, but they've not released at the moment. So if we're just looking to now, there's no one game that's sort of run away with it this year in terms of critical response or kind of gamer consensus. So it reminds me of the year that I think Sekiro won Game of the Year, where, that was a fantastic game, and there were lots of other fantastic games around then. I think Control was one of them, for example. But there was nothing that was, for the most part, standoutish. I think for me, there's probably one game that is standoutish at the moment, but I've not finished Dread or Deathloop. So, and I've not played Horizon 5 or Halo yet, so I don't know which one's kind of gonna.
What's that one standout, Luke?
My Game of the Year at the moment is Returnal by quite a distance.
Oh wow!
Oh, okay.
So, and I think that could legitimately win Game of the Year, because it's kind of a critical darling as well, a bit like Dread is, and even Deathloop. Like any of those three, just based on the response, I could see winning Game of the Year. Psychonauts, I think, might be difficult because traditionally platformers don't do well at those sorts of things, unless they're Nintendo based. Yeah. But not to say it's not deserving of it, because it's a fantastic game as well.
It's interesting, like you say, Returnal. Yeah, I hadn't even considered that, to be honest. But out of the Xbox lineup, Luke, and we'll stay with you at the moment. What horse would you back out of the Xbox lineup?
Again, I don't know, because I think the two that, the one left, i.e. Horizon 5, would probably be the one that I would back, even though, again, traditionally racing games don't win Game of the Year either. So, but I think for me, I think that will end up as the highest critical score that Xbox have put out this year. I mean, having the last few Horizons have been like 90 plus or so on Metacritic, haven't
Each
they?
one's got higher and higher by like a point. I think like the first one was 88, then 89, then 91, and then 92. So they've increased.
Yeah, so I'd be shocked if that didn't get the best kind of average critical score of any Xbox game published this year. Because I think
out of any game possibly as well. Luke.
Possibly.
I don't think any game's averaged over 90. I think Dread is up there at like 88.
Yeah, Returnal's 88.
Yeah,
Psychonauts is 80. I think Psychonauts and Deathloop are both 88 as well.
Yeah,
so,
I think it has a very, very good chance of being the most the highest rated game critically of any platform this year, which would be agreed. I think a good achievement. And if you consider that Horizon 4 got average 91, I believe, on OpenCritic or Metacritic, one of the two, and everything I've seen so far from 5, and then if you add on top the glowing praise from Digital Foundry that just came out this week,
that goes a long way.
I can't see how that can be worse than 4. Obviously if it was an 89 compared to the Horizon 4, you could say, look, they're very similar, but I can't see how this is any worse. It does look like they've really stepped up from 4, which is an achievement in itself.
Absolutely. So you're back in the Forza Horizon horse as well then, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be up there. The thing is that Luke is also right when he says racing games don't traditionally win Game of the Year, especially at something like the VGA. So I don't expect it to win at the VGAs. I think it'll probably be something like Deathloop. I think it'll probably win it. But Luke's also right. There's no standout. Last year or in previous years, there's always been a standout in a lot of cases, like The Last of Us Part 2. You asked anybody, they knew what was going to win Game of the Year when Last of Us Part 2 was coming out. And this year, Luke's right. There's no standout, but I think Horizon 5 will likely be the highest rated because I can't see it getting beneath a 90 because these games are just so good for what they are. But I also think it'll be strange for. Well, I don't think it will be strange. I think it's perfectly valid for a racing game to win Best Game of the Year. But I think for an event like the VGAs, I think it will be a surprise to me if it did win. To be honest, so and it's also a shame that games in December, Halo included, but also any other game that's being released in December. I do think it's a shame that they're not included for a lot of these things because I also think if you go into next year, even if Halo is fantastic, it's not going to win Game of the Year in 2022 because it was released in 2021. I think Jedi Fallen Order had a similar issue a couple of years back as well, and that was released. It was released after the cutoff, and it was basically forgotten about the next year because it's at that point it's over 12 months old, and it's no longer in people's minds. The only benefit that maybe Halo has that might keep it in is with the multiplayer being free to play and with it being live service, it's going to maybe stick around a bit more than something like Jedi Fallen Order, which has an ending, and people are then going to drop off and move on to something else. Halo Infinite's going to have a longer tail, I suspect, but it's not going to be in the conversation next year, regardless of how good it is, in my opinion.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, it'll probably be, and may even win something like Best Ongoing Game or something like that. But I don't ever see a world where the 2022 Game of the Year is Halo Infinite because it was released in. It would just be weird, wouldn't it? It would just be.
Well, let's hold on to that thought, and I do completely agree, to be honest. But let's hold on to that thought. Let's go to you next, Pucks, though, if that's okay, because we haven't heard from you for a bit. What's your what horse are you backing? Are you on the same wavelength as Scott, Luke, and I? That Forza is kind of the biggest game that Xbox have put forward and stands the best chance, even though, like you say, historically racing games have never really hit the top spot.
Yeah, I am in the exact same boat. I haven't really got a different opinion on this at all. It's as much as, I've just seen a comment here from Judson in Music, actually, which I'll read out because it kind of sums the point as well. And he says, it annoys me racing games don't win. It's a game, Forza 5, technically, art, radio stations, campaign, multiplayer, sandbox, creation, etc., etc. I think it deserves it, to be honest. So based on those points, yes, that whole point kind of encompasses that, Forza 5 has so much going on and it encompasses so much in terms of design, creativity, detail, technical prowess, whatever else. But, as everyone's already said, you don't really see racing games win. And it feels weird, but I kind of understand why. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. I suppose racing games of the past have been very linear, right? Like you just kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's just the general gaming sphere, which just kind of sees racing games as just repetitive racing, rather than it doesn't have much more depth than you're just racing cars around. Or maybe that's
Can
why
I try to make like maybe a very loose comparison? I think this might work. Tell me if it does. But the way I kind of look at it, Pox, is in the same way I don't expect a Marvel movie to win an Oscar. If it has won an Oscar, I don't think it has. But you know what I mean. It kind of for something like the VGAs, there's almost like there's got to be a certain prestige, almost like a certain type of game wins that like. And you know, it's often like story narrative driven games that win those type of awards. And Horizon just doesn't fit. Our racing games don't often fit that. I disagree with it completely, but
The Last of Us Part 2 completely ticks those boxes, isn't it? Because it was highly controversial, it was highly story based, it was a highly anticipated sequel by a premium first party Sony development studio. So it ticked all of those boxes. But like you say, I'm not convinced a racing game would tick those kind of boxes, I guess. Although, having said that, though, Pux, I could understand if it was Forza Motorsport because but being Forza Horizon, I mean, it is lots of things. It is open world. There is kind of a sandbox element. It's just that you interface with the game through a car. So I do completely agree, but I don't think that should be the case, and I do absolutely agree with Judzilla Music on that one.
I do agree as well. I mean, like Forza Motorsport in the past, and Forza Horizon isn't new. I mean, we're on, it is the fifth one. That's a good example of that. But Forza Horizon 4, I think, was the start of having like a bigger, proper kind of open world sandbox where it's not just you in this empty world of roads. There's actual other stuff going on. Forza Horizon 4, maybe not a launch, but especially as it, as time went on and they keep updating the game with extra content, free or otherwise, I think at launch there was a lot of issues at first with having different, being able to just see different cars driving around and stuff. And eventually, that was fixed, and it was quite cool that because we've both played it together a number of times. It was quite cool knowing that we're in the same world, but the same instance of the world. But we can also see other racers doing stuff and just milling about, doing whatever they're doing. But then I suppose in a way the map is big, but then I suppose in the current gaming space where open world is only getting bigger and bigger, and games of a certain magnitude which don't meet certain expectations don't seem big anymore, even though they are massive, if you get what I mean.
Yeah,
so I don't know whether or not maybe Forza Horizon 5 being as big as it is, does the game have to be absolutely massive? But then I suppose the problem with that statement is that, games then become too big, don't they? To the point where actually you end up having so much lost and empty space that what do you do with it? Apart from just having a load of high speed cars going around. But I don't know. I'd like to see it win based on all the stuff that Jazilla said and what everyone else has mentioned. But again, it's a racing game at the end of the day. No matter what trinkets and lights and whatever else you put on it, people are going to perceive it as a racing game. And I think that a lot of people won't see past that, because racing, even though it's open world, you can do whatever you want, drive whatever you want, customize whatever you want. Most people will look at it and go, "Oh, it's cars. I don't care about that. I'd rather be this character that's got an in-depth story that I'm really into, and it's got all this character development, etc., etc." Do you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, I do, but I had a lot. And I completely agree. But it's a shame if people do think like that. I had so much. I probably had more fun in Forza Horizon 4 just driving around the open world in like a souped-up Aston Martin, trying to jump it off cliffs and trying to barrel roll it and all kinds of stuff. Do you know what I mean? I had absolute fun doing that because it's the sandbox element that really kind of drew me into that game. More so than the sort of the formal races and that kind of stuff. But people would be missing out if they just see it like that. Pux, let's just quickly go through the comments if we can.
Yes, I've got a few. Give me a second. Well, Pyram at the start gave us a poll idea if you would like to do it. So they ask us, what game should Bethesda give the Skyrim Special Edition treatment, i.e. with mods, upped graphics resolution, Fallout 3 or New Vegas at Green Pass Gaming? I don't know if those three options are the only two options are the only ones, but Any particular games which are currently out, which we'd like to see have the special edition treatment, perhaps?
I suspect New Vegas may win that one, but yeah, we can put that up as a poll.
I think so. I say that. I've not actually played New Vegas, I'm afraid to say.
What?
Never got around to it back in the day. I know.
Wow, well, I've got it. If you want to borrow it.
Wait, it's on Game Pass, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
But the Gina says Death's Door or Psychonauts 2 have been best game of the year for me. Back from the Dead says Resident Evil 8 Village is my game of the year. Pyro M. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, it's a good choice.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I forgot about that. I really enjoyed that game. Really enjoyed it.
Pyro M here says Flight Sim console had the highest Metacritic score this year, I believe. I've not backed that up yet. But that's back obviously the conversations about no games having more than, was it 88? I think Scott and Lukey were saying.
I think he's right actually. I think that did end up might have even ended up in the 90s.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe I missed that one because I don't know. Maybe it's like a version of a 2020 game, possibly. I'll have a quick look.
I suppose that still sits in the same boat as, you know, it's not really a game. It's not even a racing game, but it's a full-on simulator. But at the end of the day, again, from the gaming space, from the awards perspective, is it just a platform where you're just flying a load of different planes about and that's it? Like, when you look at it from that flat perspective, it seems bland that it's not quite true, but it is kind of what it is in a very, very short, crap summary, isn't it? But
there's no chance it would win. Even if that got 99 out of 100, there's no chance that would win Game of the Year.
Again, it's one where it might was best sim or something like that.
For sure. Yeah.
Another comment here from Pyro who says Jeff Keighley is biased towards Sony, in my opinion, so the winner will be Ghost of Tsushima, DC, or Returnal.
Director's cut. Yep.
Yeah.
Although, well, do director's cuts?
I don't think they would qualify. No, Returnal though. I think that's a real. I think Returnal or Deathloop are probably the contenders. I'm not so sure about Resident Evil 8. I'd like it to be one of the contenders. I'm just not convinced it would be. But I did really enjoy that game. I must admit.
Yeah. Returnal should be a contender though because it's a fantastic game.
It's still 70 bloody quid though. I'm not. I just.
Well, worth it. I got 20 hours out of that.
Really, I know I sound like a tight ass, but I'm reluctant to spend 70 quid on that because I just don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, and that's the risk, isn't it? I suppose if there was a.
Is that because of the structure of the game?
Yes, well, particularly, I mean, when you're doing roguelikes, they can be bloody brilliant like Hades, or they can really grate and grind, depending on how it's done. And to be honest, most people I've heard that have played Returnal do like it, so I'll probably have to take some faith in that. But it's still a 70 quid leap of faith. So it feels anyway.
Before I read some of the comments, what about like Ratchet and Clank, for example? Is that popular enough to be Game of the Year, given it's kind of all of the news around how it's uses the SSD and blah 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 blah. Which
I think if Ratchet and Clank can be a contender, then Psychonauts 2 should be as well, to be honest.
Yeah, they're both kind of the same level, i.e. both really fantastic games, but I don't know if they're the top three. Quite enough. I suspect it will come down to the kind of game that Scott was talking about.
Do you also reckon those games only have a chance because of their history as well? I mean, you could argue that Psychonauts 1, back in the day, was actually sold pretty poorly to the point, I believe, the original devs, or whatever they were, or was it the publisher that basically folded, I believe, from it?
Or went a bit tits up, didn't it?
Yeah, but then, because it has that history, and now it's got this cult following, and now it's become really popular, and now everyone loves it, and now, therefore, it should be Game of the Year, because it has that behind it. Is that another reason why people believe it should be, when, as you say, Luke, that ultimately platformers, do they do that well? Maybe not in Game of the Year's perspective.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think both Ratchet and Clank this year and Psychonauts, if you just in isolation, are fantastic games and probably and certainly the best games in their series. So Psychonauts in particular has a big cult following. And, Ratchet and Clank is probably a lot more ubiquitous than Psychonauts 2 is because it's had a much longer history and a much more successful history. You know, as you said, Psychonauts, the original, didn't sell well at all. So that is really a cult game. I suspect it's not quite as cult now because Psychonauts 2 did well, you know, and it's in Game Pass, so more people have exposure to it. But I think that they're both Game of the Year contenders purely on the merits of the game. I don't think you know the audiences are backing them. You know, I don't think they're in that contention just because they got a lot of fans now. I think it's more that just they're really good games, you know. So yeah, but I don't think either of them will win. But there you go.
Yeah. A few more comments, sorry. Where am I? Armello says, Psychonauts 2 for me, for their Game of the Year. Indie Gamer, Horizon 5 looks awesome, but it does very much more of the same.
As 4, I guess. Yeah, but
as 4.
Is that a bad thing, though? I don't know. Is more of the same a bad thing, though?
Well, I suppose if you're looking at, if you're, I suppose as a studio, if you're trying to be, or trying to win a Game of the Year, then you can't be more. You can't just be more of the same, right?
I guess
you have
so.
to do something new and different is usually the way.
Yeah, I mean the way they've shaken it up this year is obviously to have it obviously in a different country, which is kind of all they can do really, and obviously nice and pretty graphics on the new now generation system consoles and stuff. I guess they've innovated. There's some things around the artwork and stuff, isn't there? But that does not appeal to me in the slightest. I've got to be honest. So it just makes you wonder how much they can actually evolve a drive-in sandbox game. I guess it's interesting at that point. Yeah.
I know there's been quite a few more comments in chat, but I'll finish off the ones I got saved here. The last one, Pyro M, who says, I believe this is Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, one Game of the Year before.
That's going back.
Forza has a chance, apparently. So,
jeez.
Well, it says GT3. I'm assuming that's Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec.
Yeah, that was early PlayStation 2. That was the first PlayStation 2 GT game, I believe. So, crikey, we're talking early 2000s on that. Wow.
Yeah, 2001, I think.
Was it? Yeah, there you go.
Going back some time. Yeah, before we move on, Flap, just a couple of quick things just on the whole rating thing. First of all, I just want to kind of say I don't really care for ratings, but you know, when it comes to sort of GOTY discussions, they are kind of relevant. But if you compare like OpenCritic and Metacritic, so Metacritic, the high scoring game of the year on Metacritic is Disco Elysium: The Final Cut, which has an average rating of 97. But obviously that's a definitive edition of a game that's previously been
Has
released.
anyone played
like,
Disco
Hades
Elysium?
is up there. No,
have you? Because it's on PlayStation, isn't it? Disco Elysium. I think is it coming to Xbox? Or was it already on Xbox? I think it was heading to Xbox.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
The definitive edition, I think, is already
it's
on
Xbox.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but like the top rated games are kind of like Tetris Effect Connected Switch.
Okay.
Which obviously Tetris Effect Connected. Well, Tetris Effect came out a number of years ago, and Connected's kind of like the update. Hades is up there. So OpenCritic is one that I tend to use a little bit more. And the top 5 games at the moment, all rated at 89, are currently Super Mario 3D World of Bowser's Fury, Buster Fellows, whatever that is, Swarm, which is an Oculus game, Psychonauts 2, and It Takes Two are currently the top 5 rated games, all at 89 on OpenCritic. And then very quickly, guys, in terms of the Game Awards, I'm just going to run through the previous winners. Just to see if any of these stand out to you. So last year was Last of Us Part 2. Previous year was Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. 2018 was God of War. 2017, Breath of the Wild. 2016, Overwatch. 2015, The Witcher 3. And 2014, which was the first year, was Dragon Age Inquisition.
Wow. Okay.
So the only one that kind of stands out to me there is Overwatch, I think.
Yeah, that seems a bit odd.
The only thing is I found when you're reading that is that as you're going further back the years, like even though it's only 4 or 5 years ago, that is a long time in the gaming space, right? And a lot has changed since then. So when I hit Overwatch now, I think, man, really? But back then it was brand new, and it was like that kind of thing didn't exist. Well, it did, but not to the popularity which I think Overwatch pushed it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that was up against Doom, Inside, Titanfall 2, and Uncharted 4. It won.
Uncharted 4.
I've played 1,000 hours of Overwatch, and I cannot believe it won against that lineup. And I love that game. Yeah, I think any of them I would have probably given the Game Award to.
That's got to be Uncharted 4, surely. Well,
I don't know. Inside was that year, so that's
Okay. Well, there's a couple of others as well. Indy was saying about Death's Door. He thinks that's going to be one of the contenders, or at least
It should be.
I would like to see it there. Yeah,
it'll get the token indie space for the,
exactly.
for the game of the
year.
year.
Every year has one indie game that's nominated.
It'll be that one.
Right, so just quickly, and we'll come back to the point that I put on hold earlier, and perhaps we'll just do a very quick round. Technically, Halo Infinite and the new God of War Ragnarok will be launching in the same game of the year, if that makes sense, kind of December to December. Let's call it that. And I do completely take your point that by the time 2022 game awards come around, Halo Infinite may very well be kind of forgotten, particularly in the shadow of God of War, because it would just be newer in everyone's minds. But in a year where those two are stacking up, do you think Halo has a chance? Do you think it's a foregone conclusion? Who do you think would win out of those heavyweights? Bearing in mind, obviously, I know we've not played either, but that's quite an interesting one to stack up, Scott. What do you think they might make of that?
I don't think it's a particularly hard decision.
You think it's God of War all the way?
Wins it every single day of the week. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I think narratively, God of War is likely to be better than Halo, and that's come from someone who's heavily invested in the Halo story. I think. Well, the thing is, it's difficult to judge because what we're judging here is God of War 2 based on God of War, which was Game of the Year when it came out, and then Halo, which we can't really compare it to Halo. Well, we can compare it to Halo 5 Guardians. The thing is, the multiplayer I don't think would really come into it. I think if the multiplayer is good and the single player of Halo is bad, it's got no chance. I think if the single player is good and the multiplayer is bad, I think it's got a chance, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I've still got concerns over the single player of Halo because, well, first of all, we've still not seen it. We should hopefully see it soon.
Yeah, we're getting late, aren't we? It is getting very late for us still not to have seen it. I've got to be honest. Yeah,
exactly. And based on Halo 5's campaign, I'm still, very nervous about where they go with Halo from a story perspective. So yeah, I think those two. I mean, obviously we're kind of just speculating based on two unreleased games. But I think if you were to ask me to put money on it, I would put money on God of War. And I think that would be a fairly easy decision for a lot of people. I think if those two are stacked up against each other, it's likely that God of War would win. But I think that's because it fits the mold of those types of awards. If you were to ask me personally, Halo would likely win easily because I would be putting more weight towards the multiplayer side of things, which is sort of what I'm more excited for. So it's difficult. It depends on what angle you look at it, really. But I think, purely from like the Game Awards or IGN or GameSpot or whatever, I think it's a safe bet would be God of War.
It's interesting. You have the same opinion, Luke?
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I don't really have much to add. Yeah, I think if Ragnarok is on the same level as the first God of War, then I would expect it to win next year's TGAs. Well, maybe. I think there's a lot of potentially really, really good games next year. So ones that traditionally perform very well. Elden Ring comes to mind, for example.
Breath of the Wild 2.
Breath of the Wild, Jesus. Yeah,
Starfield.
I feel really sorry. Starfield, we're forgetting all of these.
Yeah, next year's TGS.
Horizon?
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah, no, Scott said Horizon Forbidden West. Sorry. Yeah, so, I mean, it's, but let's not think about our wallets and next year. But in terms of the direct comparison between Halo and Ragnarok, I think as Scott said, that God of War in the first place is kind of the type of game that traditionally does win Game of the Year, at TGAs anyway. So if it's on that level, I just can't see. I couldn't see Halo doing, being able to compete unless the campaign is fantastic. And as Scott said, there's a lot of question marks over that because we don't know. And I wouldn't say that 343 have delivered a particularly fantastic campaign yet. So there's a lot on, and so who knows? But Scott's right again that like for individuals it's very different, because you might if you might put more weight on multiplayer, but and so Infinite will probably be someone's game of the year for that reason, because I'm sure the multiplayer will be amazing. Well, I know it's amazing. I've played it. We've all played it, right? So, yeah, it's a difficult. It's a difficult and not difficult question. It's difficult because we don't know how those two games are going to turn out, but it's not difficult if we think about, okay, if they turn out how we expect them to turn out, even if Halo Infinite's really good, I don't think it will score better than Ragnarok. But who knows? We don't know.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Pucks, I don't know about you, I'm really missing Halo. I thought I was washing up the other day. I know that sounds crazy. And I was just washing up and I was thinking...
What are you washing up?
I was just thinking I'd love to be able to go and play that Halo multiplayer again right now, because I enjoyed it so much.
44 days flat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not far.
It's
not far. And it's not often a beta or a flight in does that. I have had that in the past where you've played it and enjoyed it so much you just want to play it again and again and again. But it really did do that to me, and I'm so looking forward to it. But yeah, okay. Cool. Okay, well, thank you for that. Yeah, chat. Thanks.
Before we do move on, can I just a quick little thing I remembered about, because you guys, talking about, God of War and Halo sitting in the 2022 cycle, just to kind of bring your minds back to last year. You may remember a little known game called Cyberpunk, which was also fell out of the original window and should have been contender this year. Do we expect to see that anywhere?
Absolutely not. Not a chance.
I thought you might go.
Go on, tell us another one. Go on.
I've got it. Are there any more?
I don't think that's going to be in there whatsoever, to be honest. Imagine if it was.
Do you think if the next gen patch had come out this year, it might have been slightly different?
No.
I think they've damaged it. I'll tell you what, I am surprised that they're pushing The Witcher 3 quite as hard as they are. I thought they would have put all hands to the pumps getting Cyberpunk 2077 up to scratch, but there they are with Witcher 3.
I think they recognise that Cyberpunk is a lost cause now.
You reckon they're cutting it loose? You reckon?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, they'll continue to support it, but
they can't. Yeah, but the thing is, they can't keep flogging The Witcher 3 though. Surely, I mean, anyone who loves it's already played it twice already.
I think they can. It's their Skyrim.
Yeah.
It's their Skyrim.
It is their Skyrim. It is their Skyrim, and it is critically acclaimed, almost universally loved. And harkens back to a very good time for CD Projekt Red. So they, and I've got no doubt at all that they are going to be working on a new Witcher game. Especially now with the success of the Netflix show and it becoming more ubiquitous.
Yes, that's true.
So I think the issue with Cyberpunk is it doesn't matter how many, next gen patches or anything like that. Take it from someone who's played it on the quote unquote next gen version, on the PC version. There is, unless they make a new game, it's not going to win any Game of the Year awards. So, there are too many issues with the game. And I've loosened on it slightly. It's better than I initially gave it credit for, but it's still not brilliant. So
So they're going to continue to milk The Witcher 3 teat until it's dry.
And so they should. That's a great game. That's an amazing game. So, do that. And hopefully the patch will be really cool for that. I'm really looking forward to seeing... Because it sounds like they're going to go above and beyond the PC version. It's going to be kind of ray traced, etc., for the Witcher 3 stuff. So, if they do that could be really cool.
Oh, Mello's just said Skyrim would like a word.
That's why, speaking of Skyrim, should we quickly wrap up the poll as well before we move on?
Yes, let's do that.
Based on a question that Pyro said, which was, what game should Bethesda give the Skyrim Special Edition treatment? And I suppose I'm actually a bit surprised about this in a good way.
Yeah,
Fallout 3's got a bit more love than I thought it would.
Yeah, it's a lot closer than I was expecting. I've got to be honest. Yeah.
13 votes, 46% Fallout 3, 54 for New Vegas. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that. So perhaps that's something they will do. Don't really know. Fantastic. Well, let's move on. Chat, thank you very much for being here, everyone. It's great to have the familiar faces in the chat, new people as well. Thank you. If you are listening and you're not in the chat, please get involved. We're a friendly bunch. We won't jump down your neck if you say something that isn't to our fancy. It's a friendly it's a friendly channel, and the chat's always fantastic. So please, get involved. Well, let's move on to the 20th anniversary of Xbox, and what a milestone that is. And not just Xbox, but also Halo as well, obviously. And Xbox are planning to do some celebrations on November the 15th. And Scott, let's come to you first, if that's okay. Just let's ask this question around. What's the best thing that you like about Xbox? Do you think? I mean, they've been around for 20 years, and I guess during the Xbox One era, it was probably a little bit dicey at points where there was probably decisions made as to whether they're going to continue in this sector or not, and they obviously did, and they've come out fantastically well. But Xbox as a brand, what's the one thing you could put your finger on saying this is why I'm an Xbox gamer? Is there anything specific that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think that this won't come as too much of a surprise, mate. But the obvious answer for me is Halo.
Oh, so
Halo
software.
1 is but I'll kind of give a second answer as well, actually, because sort of my path into the Xbox. So originally, before I was my console that I had before an Xbox was a Dreamcast, and what I loved playing on the Dreamcast was Phantasy Star Online, Quake, and there was obviously some single player games, Skies of Arcadia, Quiz Taxi, Sonic, those sorts of things. But it was Choo Choo Rocket as well, these online games. I had a PC, played a lot of Counter Strike back then. I used to play some World of Warcraft. So there's Halo, but then obviously the big thing was Xbox Live. And sort of what that brought to console gaming, alongside the likes of back in the day, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the original Rainbow Six games, Halo 2, obviously, and it just added a whole new dimension to games for me, which was being able to play online with friends with voice chat on the couch, which was a completely novel idea at the time. Xbox Live kind of, I guess for better or for worse, kind of revolutionized sort of multiplayer gaming on console, I think is probably fair to say. So from a software perspective, it was absolutely Halo, but then from a services perspective, it was the impact Xbox Live had on someone who's primarily, and still is primarily, a multiplayer gamer, more so than anything else. And that's why I've continued to stay there, because Xbox Live, at least, now you could probably say, look, the services are very comparable. It's hard to pick one over the other, but historically, Xbox Live has been generally superior to PlayStation Plus, but also, as somebody whose favorite genre is first-person shooters, Xbox also had Halo. So that's where I was going to go. If it wasn't going to be Xbox, it was probably going to be PC. So that's the thing for me. And Halo Infinite is the most excited I've been for a game in a genuinely for a long time. Especially having played the beta, because it takes me back to playing Halo 2 with friends over Xbox Live. Which kind of comes back to your question then. And they've kind of nailed the feel of, it's almost like a cross between Halo 2 and Halo 5 in a way. And that's what's got me so excited, because it reminds me of a time when I was younger. I had less responsibility. All I did was play games. And it kind of just reminds me a little bit of being a kid again. I'm super, super excited for Infinite. So those are the two things for me, Matt.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And it's interesting that you came up with software straight away, because obviously, games rope you in and stuff, but I've always been pretty impressed with Xbox hardware as well. And to be honest, as much as Kinect is kind of frowned upon nowadays, back in the day when Kinect first came out, and it was actually a phenomenal piece of kit in its own right. I didn't necessarily agree that they should probably push into the same market that the Wii had found itself in, but as a piece of kit, it's fantastic, and the Microsoft can really push out a serious piece of hardware, and I think the Series X and S demonstrate that, and also the One X as well, really well. Luke, what thing makes you an Xbox gamer?
It's a loaded question, isn't it? So I think, I think it's one of those things where there are products that come along and things that you buy. I think, as Scott said and kind of alluded to, at a time of your life, and then whenever you kind of associate that thing with that period of time. It gives you kind of, happy feelings. And for me, I vividly remember coming home from school and there was an Xbox there, and it had Combat Evolved, and I'd seen a bit about the Xbox at the time, but not tons and tons, and it was very surprising. And from the minute I booted it up and I played that game, and there were others as well, I think, like Scott said, it's the kind of the software angle that really resonated with me. Like, they were, especially on the original Xbox, there were a lot of really memorable games that Microsoft were putting out, or that they were helping to publish or bringing in exclusively to the system, that became some of my favorite franchises of all time. Halo is one of those. And I think, like you said, Flap, the hardware element was always very impressive. Certainly the Xbox way back when, it was pushing visuals that you really didn't see anywhere else on console. So it was memorable for that reason as well. And then I think, oddly enough, a bit of a difference to the person I am now, but the era of Xbox Live, the first incarnation of that, growing up in that, and having all of that online experience and playing, Halo games and Wolfenstein, Counter-Strike, Unreal Tournament, Unreal Championship, all of those, even Whacked. I mean, I remember Whacked, and all that sort of stuff. So, it came along at a time where I was really getting into online gaming, and it became kind of the de facto thing that I played.
Did you have a PS2 at the time?
Yes, I did. I did have a PS2, but I didn't. I only got a PS2 later, so I had an Xbox probably for about a year and a half before I had a PS2. So I caught up on a great deal of stuff on PS2. So for a while, all I really had was an Xbox. And it was just great. It was putting out some incredible stuff, and that kind of, it didn't really transfer over to the 360 era for me. I still played and loved a lot of stuff on the 360, but it's really the original Xbox that made me a big fan of the brand in general. I'll not say too much about the Xbox One era because that wasn't great, but and now I think the thing that I really like about Xbox, and that's keeping me invested, isn't so much Xbox Live or multiplayer or any of that, but it's the fact that they've kind of paired themselves back to that original vision of incredible software, and gone, we need to get back to the days under the Xbox, where there were tons of really incredible, varied games coming from Microsoft and their partners. And giving you a reason to invest in that platform. I felt like that was really, the Xbox One era, they really lost their way with that. That was the biggest thing I think they really lost their way with. And so kind of right now, I think feels closer than it's ever felt to the original Xbox feeling for me.
That's cool.
And I think that's going to continue. So, and obviously Game Pass now is a huge thing. It's just incredibly good value, and it really makes you quite grateful to be a gamer in this time, because you've got this fantastic service where you've got all this content coming out all the time, but you're paying a fraction of the cost you normally would do. I think that, there's plenty of reasons why I'm a fan, but I think it goes back to that original software lineup and those kind of franchises like Halo that have, still keep me around now, even though they're not necessarily. I wouldn't say Halo's the biggest thing that Microsoft have now. I think it's a huge franchise still, but I don't think it is anymore. In terms of the biggest thing they have, they've got plenty now that's kind of on a similar level or could exceed it. So.
That's really cool, and it takes me back a little bit because I blimey, like yourself, Scott, I was a Sega fan, Master System, Mega Drive, Saturn, Dreamcast, still got them all. Absolutely loved my Dreamcast, and really was gutted when Sega kind of fell at the bottom of themselves, as it were. And when you look at the history of Sega and Sega and stuff, and you see why and what happened, it was going to happen at some point. It was almost inevitable, I think. Just sort of bad management globally, let's call it that kind of thing. So I kind of lent on the PS2 a little bit, but it was never really my favourite brand, because it was always the one that was competing with my first love, which was kind of the Sega side of things. So I had a Saturn before I had a PS1, I had a Dreamcast before I had a PS2, those kind of things. So you'd automatically think that I would jump straight into the Xbox arena. But back in those days, and I know VJ mentioned this on the show quite a few times, I lacked trust in Microsoft and the new kids to the block, because back in those days, crikey, what would it have been? Windows 98 we were probably still running then on most machines. And I don't know, Microsoft didn't have the greatest of reputations when it comes to that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it was.
I remember seeing Microsoft with the with the $sign and Microsoft.
Exactly. There you go. All of that. Yeah. So I never jumped on board early on, and I hold my hand up now. I missed out on a lot, particularly software-wise. Obviously, hardware, it came probably about halfway through the PS2 life cycle, if I remember rightly. And it was obviously more technically advanced, and like you say, it had an Ethernet port built in, if I'm much mistaken. Whereas on the PS,
hard drive, I remember.
Yeah, that's it. Yep, hard drive was the other one.
Games
yeah, no more memory cards.
It was,
yeah,
yeah, it was almost. I don't. Do you think it would be a bit? Would it be much to say? It was almost revolutionary in a way.
I think it was evolutionary. I think it was
yeah,
evolutionary. Because
the controller as well.
Yeah, see, the Duke put me off a little bit, and we'll come to the comments.
Actually, I was thinking of. I kind of forgot about the Duke, the revised, smaller controller.
Yeah, no, see, the Duke is the one that sticks in my mind. Yeah, at the time, and seems to be buttons everywhere. They didn't obviously have RB and LB. They had the black and white ones above the XYAB, didn't they? So that kind of put me off, and I think for me at the time, it seems like they were trying to push it, turn the consoles into PCs, because, like you say, it had a built-in Ethernet port, it had hard drives and stuff. And of course, nowadays you wouldn't be without those things. They are, they're non-negotiables, let's call them. But yeah, I never jumped on that train. It wasn't until the 360 launched, and I remember Call of Duty 2. I remember being in Toys R Us, and they had like the demo version playing it. It's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And it was actually better than my PC at the time. So I jumped on board. And then not long after I got Gears of War, I thought, oh my God, this is fantastic. And to be honest, from that moment on, I was absolutely hooked. But I am a little bit gutted. I missed out on an entire generation and the software that went with it, like the games you were mentioning, Luke, Halo and stuff like that. I don't have that same history, sadly, but like I say, from the 360 onwards, I was fully on board. Pucks, tell us about your Xbox history.
Oh God, I suppose my journey into Xbox was actually, I guess, a bit of a sad one, but from a personal perspective. But I guess, aside from my general gaming history, I suppose watching people like yourself when I was a kid, actually. If people don't know in the chat, we are both related, and I've obviously seen you bring home, PlayStation 1s and Saturns, whatever else. So I think my first console that I ever had as a young kid was actually a Master System 2, which had Sonic the Hedgehog built into it if you turned it on without a game. Yeah. So I played that forever and ever. And then I became a big Nintendo fan from the Game Boy Color onwards. That's kind of what got me into that. Playing, that's how I discovered Super Mario, Legend of Zelda, all that kind of stuff. Not through a SNES, but through the Game Boy Color. That eventually led me to PlayStation, which I very much dearly loved, and I was Team PlayStation for the longest time from then. I'd old school friends who had N64s. That's how I discovered that. Again, that kind of increased my love for. That's when I discovered Smash Brothers and things like Mario Kart 64. I remember my sister when she was a kid as well had to go to Great Ormond Street for a good number of times for various reasons. So I would get dragged along as well, and they had a cabinet there with an N64 and playing Mario Kart. Wow. So that's kind of where my love for that cool. kind of got bigger and bigger. So then when I saw that the Game Boy Advance was a thing that was coming out, I remember asking for that and requesting that from Father Christmas or Santa Claus, I wanted Mario Kart Super Circuit, which I both still have to this day, which was good fun. But from that side, yeah, but PlayStation then discovered that. I think, again, through yourself, originally buying one way back in the day. And absolutely loving that, from Crash Bandicoot, to all sorts of other ones like Buster Move, Klonoa. God, there's all sorts.
Spyro.
And from there, yeah, Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah.
Christ, too many to think of. But
I probably showed you Resident Evil way before you should have done as well.
Yes, I think you did. I don't think I liked it back then, but I very much like it now, though. It's good fun now.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then I think I put my pants a little bit. But I suppose fun fact from me, I remember as a kid, the game Medieval, with the skeleton Sir Daniel Fortescue. I think the CGIs for that game back then on the loading sequence or on a demo disc was so grotesque that it actually terrified me, even though he was the hero of the game. But that was a great time. But then from that, I naturally pivoted to PlayStation 2 and GameCube. So GameCube was my first home Nintendo console, which I fell in love with. And that's when I got into Smash Bros, Melee, Mario Sunshine, Wind Waker, whatever else. And then, of course, on the PlayStation side, I happily continued with the PlayStation 2. I played that for all that time. I knew of an Xbox from magazines. I had a few school friends who had an Xbox, and I went around and discovered Halo a bit, which was quite cool. But at the time, I only played it for such a short period of time that, I couldn't dedicate enough time to it to really get into it, if you get what I mean. So I knew Halo existed and things like that, but I wasn't into it just for the sole fact that I didn't spend enough time with it at the time. And then during the kind of onboarding onto next gen at the time, PS3 and 360 coming along, I was very much wanting the PS3. I was team PlayStation, again, because of my, I suppose, lack of knowledge, but I kind of, like you guys, well, not like you guys, but I think it was partially mentioned yourself, Flap, that in a way I kind of I knew Xbox was a thing. I knew it was from Microsoft, but I guess because it was this new contender, as a kid especially, I just kind of brushed it off as, oh, that's just a new thing, but I've got these two things, being the GameCube and PlayStation 2, so why would I need that? And plus, from my parents' perspective at the time, it was, well, you've already got two, you don't need a third one, and we can't afford it. So my hands were tied as a kid, so there we are. But then I remember, again, wanting the PlayStation 3. That eventually got delayed 6 months later. But then my late mother now, unfortunately, but at the time, my mother was very seriously ill from cancer. And I suppose as a parting gift before she did pass, she actually bought me a 360, and that was just before Christmas of 2006. I believe, or 2005 even, when it not long came out. So that's kind of how I jumped into it. And it was actually from there when I discovered the Xbox Live ecosystem, but all the games and services that had to offer. And then as time went on, I was in secondary school, early secondary school at this point. So a lot of my secondary school friends there, Xbox was this 360 was this brand which was getting bigger and bigger. The advertising was getting out there, and loads of my friends at school had one. Obviously, you had one. We've played together back in the day, and whatever else. Signed up to Xbox Live and discovered all the amazing things that were happening, and obviously then new IPs such as Gears of War and Forza and all these other ones were being released on the platform, and it was doing stupidly well, and it was awesome, and it all kind of went from there, really. And then since then, I absolutely loved it. And I've kind of, I'd like to say I've been Team Xbox ever since, but as I've said on previous podcasts, I then did pivot to PS4 last gen. But I am back on Team Xbox now, and I couldn't be happier to be a part of it, if I'm perfectly honest. So it's a weird journey, but that is basically my journey into Xbox.
Yeah, I think we've all got kind of staggered journeys on this one, haven't we? And like you say, we dabble in other platforms as well. We're obviously not just purely Xbox gamer. You'd have to be pretty hardcore just to be an Xbox gamer, I guess, without considering, Nintendo, Sega back in the day, obviously PlayStation, PC, and all kinds of stuff. But it's an interesting one. So let's just round this off then. Do we think they're going to announce anything special at this 20th anniversary edition? Do you think we might get to see a little bit more of Halo there, Scott? Is this where we get to see the campaign a bit more, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the obvious thing. They have come out and they've said they're not going to announce anything new, which is, I think they kind of got out straight away and went, look, it's a celebration. We're not going to announce anything here. I think the announcements will come Game Awards later in the year. They'll probably have maybe one or two things to show there.
They've already mentioned Hellblade 2, haven't they, for the Game Awards?
They've not specified it, but that's been heavily implied by the usual sources like Jez and Mr. Grubb. I don't think they've specifically said, but it kind of makes sense. Halo Infinite kind of is the obvious thing, really, because we need to see that soon. We really, really do. And if you're going to show Halo, the anniversary kind of makes sense. It just better look good if you're going to, celebrate something. It's kind of got to look good if you're going to celebrate it. But I think this is maybe where we'll see maybe possibly something new from something like Avowed, or not necessarily Perfect Dark, but some of the announced games that they've announced in previous E3s of the Game Awards. I think we might see some things of announced games, but not necessarily anything new. I think there'll probably be some backwards compatibility announcements. You mentioned Flap. You missed out on a lot of original Xbox games because you kind of missed that. I suspect there'll be at least a handful of original Xbox games that come to Game Pass and come to Series X, possibly with enhancements, maybe.
Fusion friendly. I've had a dabble in fusion friendly. Frenzy, sorry.
Such a shame they can't do kind of what Nintendo have done with their online service and add sort of online multiplayer to some of these old games, because that'll be a cool one. Yeah, so I think Halo Infinite is going to be the big thing that they show, Flap.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Anything else, Luke? Do you think they'll show anything else? Just Halo? Be a good stage.
It's really difficult to. Yeah, it's difficult to gauge what they've got planned, because I think there's a danger, I suppose, that people could hype themselves up too much. I mean, I know they've tried to temper expectations somewhat by saying, we're not going to announce anything new here, but there's still a danger that people can, get themselves too hyped up even on that statement and think, well, maybe we'll see X, Y, and Z there that they've already announced. I think Halo Infinite is probably the safest bet that could be made out of anything that they've announced so far. But I think I think it probably just will be a focus on the anniversary, and definitely some backwards compatibility stuff, because that's just obvious.
Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah,
it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I would think out of stuff that's coming in the future, I think Halo is probably the safest bet in terms of campaign footage, and then everything else will be an actual celebration of Xbox, which won't be a bad show. I mean, that'll be quite a fun thing to watch, but I think people should very much temper their expectations about, anything else coming, particularly when I think in terms of the kind of exciting stuff that we want to see that they've already announced, the Game Awards are right around the corner. So it's more than likely to save, one of the big things or the big thing for that. And I know there were rumors, weren't they, about Hellblade 2 being there, for example. So,
yeah.
I would definitely expect something like that, or Avowed, or anything like that, to probably be at the Game Awards and not this thing.
Okay, no, that's cool. Pux, let's catch up with the chat. We did ask everyone what makes you an Xbox gamer. What have we had going on?
I've got a few comments saved in front of me here. One from Smitty Smith, who says, the community is what makes me an Xbox gamer. Pyro M says, Halo in all caps.
He spelled that out over 4 separate messages as well, and no one got in between. Yeah.
Another one here from Armello, who says, the Duke controller made me an Xbox gamer. I hated the flimsy PlayStation controller, and when I tried the Duke, I was sold.
You must have big hands, because I wasn't sold on the Duke, if I'm honest. Although I do agree I don't like the PlayStation controllers. I think the PS5 is the first PlayStation controller that I actually don't mind.
Did you not like the PlayStation 4 controller?
Not really. It's pretty much the same as all of the ones that came before it, isn't it? What's the difference?
Well, it's a bit wider, a lot more physically wider than.
I suppose so.
Past ones.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But I argue. Well, from what I hear online, I clearly don't have as big hands as I think I do, because there are a lot of people out there who say it's far too small. But for me, it fit perfectly fine. But...
There's a joke about that, but we'll keep it clean. Go on.
Yeah. A last one I've got stored here, at least. I've not seen any more in the chat so far, but Back from the Dead says, it was Halo CE on the OG Xbox. I played the last few missions to help him beat the game. was so blown away by. I had to get an Xbox, and I've been an Xbox gamer ever since.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's nice to hear other people's stories and their journeys, not just into Xbox, but in gaming in general, because, we've all been on different paths, and it's quite strange. One thing is, there is lots of sort of influences or outside influences with friends and sort of siblings and stuff like that get people into stuff, and it's really interesting to see the journeys that people have been on and the games that sort of click with them. One of the games that actually made me buy the Mega Drive was Mickey Mouse's Castle of Illusion. That blew me away. It absolutely blew me away, and I was at school at that time. Strange, isn't it? Because you play it now, and it's I would be able to pick out and point out all of the bits that I absolutely loved, but it would probably leave most people stone cold if they were to play it nowadays. But yeah, interesting.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing. Flat.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It really is.
And you have to be in that moment to understand what kind of resonated with you at that time, if that makes sense. But
yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, chat. You've been fantastic, and you still are. We've got a few new names in the chat as well at the moment as well. We've got Internal Umbra, Mello. We've got Indie Gamer, welcome here. Baldman Gamer's back from being out. So it's Timmy, Dragon Wolf. Guys, thank you very much for being here. And let's just do a bit of a light topic on this last one. And again, Scott, I keep coming to you first on these topics. I'm going to do it again. Only because you kind of put this one forward as a topic, really. But the weird kind of Fable tweet that kind of leaked out. Is that the right way of putting it? I suppose it kind of leaked out because they had to backtrack. So, yeah. What did you make of that?
It was a bit strange. So did you guys happen to see this at the time? Out of interest, did anybody see the tweet?
I came to it late when it had all kind of happened and been recounted, as it were. But it was odd at the time. I can imagine.
Yes, it was bizarre. The first thing that was bizarre is it came from Xbox Game Studios Publishing, which is kind of the arm of Xbox that works with third parties. And they basically posted that they had something special to kick off. And then in brackets, I think they said, I think it was something I would just need to get our chickens ready or something, something along those lines. And people instantly made the jump to Fable. For people who have played Fable, you'll know why. And I tweeted at the time because people were making the sense. I was like, that doesn't make sense. First of all, it's coming from Xbox Game Studios Publishing. Obviously, Fable is going to be published by Xbox Game Studios, the first party publishing arm, not the third party publishing arm. So the only real thing at the time that it could have been was maybe a remake or a remaster of maybe Fable 1 or Fable 2. Fable 1's already been remastered. And also it would be weird to remake Fable 1 at the same time as rebooting Fable. So I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But then they followed up with a tweet basically saying, we were going to call it our Fable Anniversary, but that name was taken. And then I was just thinking, okay, so is it Fable 2 Anniversary or something? But then Fable 2's Anniversary is at least like 3 years away or something like that. So it was just truly bizarre. And it kind of got people really excited for something Fable related to be announced. And then it was maybe an hour later or something like that. They basically said, look, we're sorry. We don't have any big news tomorrow or any information about or about Playground Games' upcoming Fable game. And they deleted the original tweet, which was bizarre because the weird thing about it was, I guess, nothing was really announced on Monday either.
No,
so
that's the thing. Nothing actually landed.
It's not like they were sort of tweeting something and they maybe just accidentally hinted it was Fable related when it was something else. Just nothing came. So I don't know if it was maybe just a scheduled tweet that never got deleted. Maybe they were just talking about the Xbox anniversary stream, but then they didn't answer that till Tuesday. So maybe they published it a day early. Who knows?
The actual tweet was, we're excited to kick off something special tomorrow. Just give us one more day to prepare the chickens. And like you say, it's surely that's Fable, isn't it? The only other thing that I can think is kind of PUBG with chicken, winner chicken dinner. What else would chickens, relate to? I don't get it.
Strange. And like I say, the weirdest thing is just that nothing came of it. So but it came out on a Sunday as well, which is really unusual. So the only thing that I can think of is it was a scheduled tweet that got tweeted at the wrong time. they accidentally tweeted it, and then somebody on the day off on a Sunday saw what was kicking off on Twitter. And I was like, shit, I need to log in and do something about this. So I assume it was maybe just relating to the anniversary, and that's what they're saying. We're going to kick off the anniversary by announcing the celebration or something like that. But then again, it was weird that it came from the Twitter account that I did, because like I say, that's the third party publishing arm of Xbox. Or the arm that works with third parties, I should say. Yeah, so it was a bit unusual, and I think a lot of people got very excited for something Fable related. Obviously, people are really excited for the Fable reboot. People got super excited for a potential Fable 1 or Fable 2 remaster, or even a Fable collection, and then nothing came of it. So it was all a bit unusual.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. Look, there seems to be kind of these leaks keep springing out. Well, I don't know if you could call it a leak. I suppose I don't really know what it was all about anyway. But this 30 million Game Pass and this kind of tweet. There's been a few weird sort of tweets that have to been sort of retracted, isn't there? A little bit strange goings on over on that side of things. Is that do Microsoft need to perhaps keep a tighter grip on some of the information that's floating around, or is that very hard for them to do you think? Because I guess we get it on the PlayStation side as well, but I guess areas prick up a little bit more when it's the Xbox side of things.
Yeah, I mean, this one was just really, really, really bizarre, because nothing ever came of it, which is the strangest thing.
Do you think it's still yet to come then, potentially?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. It's just a totally bizarre series of tweets, and I just don't know how it would kind of be pushed early, too early, and considering it kind of rumbled on for a little, a little bit. But I mean, yeah, I knew it was. It was weird that they linked, that it was such a Fable link, because it was the Xbox game publishing, so they wouldn't be doing any first party stuff anyway. So that's the one that was really weird. And
they could have outsourced maybe something to a third party. That's kind of the link that everybody was trying to put together. Like how Delilah did, kind of like the reboot of Battletoads, something along those lines, maybe. But yeah, that's still a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, isn't it? It's just really hard to actually rationalize what was going on. So I mean, it's very possible they pushed the button too early, but then I don't know. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it hurts my brain, because I'm just like, I don't really know what was going on with it. But yeah, I think generally, probably Xbox should just keep a lid on. I think the thing is that when you're doing teasers like that, when you're teasing like that, you really have to deliver. If you're just tweeting about stuff, like the Game Pass account does, for example, it tweets about the games that are coming to Game Pass, but then it's not, whenever it teases something, it's always, okay, we're teasing something for Game Pass, and then very shortly thereafter, there's the thing, here it is. With one like this, it's kind of on that weird, almost like on the weird abandoned level of tweets, where it's like, oh yeah, it's not Silent Hill, but wink wink, it's Silent Hill, and everybody knows it's like, everybody's like you're pushing expectations just by tweeting something like that, and it's really harmful, and it will backfire, and it backfired on them clearly, because they had to delete the tweet. So yeah, it's just weird. It's just strange. Maybe it is something like as you say, it's got like a third, like an outsourced Fable project. It's something small, or it could, it might not be anything to do with that. It's really hard to tell, but yeah, maybe they should just not do that if they can't.
Well, they've got so many, developers and studios, and they all must know various things, I guess, and obviously, I guess if you think rumours are probably bad this side of the fence, I'm guessing it's probably just as bad if you are actually an Xbox, working for an Xbox developer studio, because obviously they probably don't get told things directly, but hear rumors internally and stuff that, there's probably some of the sources for Jeff Grubb and people like that, I should think. But and obviously Windows Central and places like that. So it's quite interesting. Pux, if it was a Fable title being announced, or perhaps even a remake of one of the later ones, I mean, they wouldn't do that, would they? I don't know. It's an interesting one. Like you say, it is just a little bit crazy. But Fable's quite up there for you, isn't it? It was one of your franchises that you love.
Oh, definitely. I back in the 360 days. I played the Fable Anniversary a bit later on, and I had played a bit of the original, again, around a friend's original Xbox forever ago. I quite enjoyed it. It was okay, but I enjoyed it enough that when Fable 2 became like a thing, that was like, oh wow, this looks really cool. And I played it, and I got absolutely suckered in. Bought the DLC whenever it was, and I mean, Fable 3 unfortunately didn't quite turn out as I think a lot of people hoped. But I personally still very much enjoyed the game, despite its flaws and whatever else. But I don't think, I mean, given that all three of the originals are on Gamepass and stuff, and people can easily go back to them if they so wish to. I don't think people would be that bothered about a remaster of a Fable now. Personally, I don't think there's much more you could really add to it to make it more compelling in today's standards. I mean, yes, I suppose like the GTA stuff, you could revamp it, but do people care anymore? I think people just want a new Fable, right? But so I find it hard to believe that there'll be any kind of form of remake of older Fables. But I mean, and there was that cancelled Fable multiplayer project from way yonder, wasn't it? On original Xbox One.
Legends.
Fable Legends, yeah.
I mean, is that making a recursion? I highly doubt it, but you never know.
Not a chance.
Nope.
But no, this whole Fable tweet thing was very strange. But I'd like to think we see something soon. Hopefully at the VGAs or something, we hear some more news of Fable. But I don't think this weird Fable tweet stuff is much more to look into. It does seem like it was more of an honest mistake. Maybe there was something behind it which was unintended or just completely mistimed. Who knows?
It's quite a painful situation when they announce games so early. A little bit like Hellblade 2. We won't have seen anything of it. And assuming they're going to show it this year at the TGAs, which again is still in question. If they do, then we won't have seen anything of it for 2 years. I know there was those sort of vlogs that they were doing in Iceland that no one cared about. But 2 years, and for a game that people are highly anticipating, that's a long time to wait. And to be honest, we're still probably a good couple of years out from it launching as well, on top of that, potentially. So, and the same for Fable and Avowed, things like that. I know Avowed may be slightly more advanced than we may first have thought when it was first announced, but it's still a fair way off. And it is painful, isn't it, knowing that these games are coming and not hearing anything of them for months, from 1 6-month period to the next. It is quite painful. Well, you never know. You never know what might turn up at the Xbox 20th anniversary celebrations. Like you say, I think Halo is a definite, but you never know. Something else might turn up.
Well, on that front, I think on the official Xbox News website, when they talk about it, they do specifically mention Xbox and Halo 20th anniversary. So it seems inevitable just from that there's 100% Halo stuff going to be shown.
It's just whether there's anything else, I guess. But we'll have to see. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much. We're going to wrap the show up now if we can, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed talking about these topics, and I actually kind of enjoyed going down memory lane as well. I'm surprised we didn't get more comments about Sega. That normally lights the chat up, to be honest, when we talk about Sega stuff, but perhaps we've done that to death. I do have a confessionals planned in my mind as well, so hopefully we might be able to try and smash that out next week as well. And it's always a great one for the chat to get involved, and I do enjoy the confessionals, so let's try and get one of those in the diary if we can. But thank you very much, panel. Some good topics. The news can be a little bit up and down lately because obviously there is some big things coming, and it's kind of the quiet before the storm sometimes. And we do have to feed on the tidbits that are thrown at us via Twitter and Xbox, putting out some peculiar tweets and retracting them and things like that. But it's all part of the fun and why we love doing this podcast. Chat, thank you very much, everyone. Go on, go.
Can I just say something? Because I'm aware we've got a few new listeners in the chat from what I've seen earlier. So I suppose just want to quickly take this opportunity just to kind of say that, well, one, thank you very much for watching, but also to let you guys know who are new to listening that we do have a Discord channel as well, and it's pretty active. We have various channels for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, general chat, whatever else. So if you'd like to join us there and be a part of the GPG family and the conversation after the show, please join us there. And I believe there is a link in the video description as well. So if you have liked what you've listened to today and would like to continue the discussions offline, so to speak, then by all means, please join our Discord and we can continue the chats there.
Absolutely. Come and join the party after the party. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Like I say, thank you very much, GPG Crew. It's always a pleasure. Hopefully we'll all be back next week and we'll be smashing out some more topics and opinions for your audio delight. Chat, thank you very much. As Puxley said, always great to have new people in the chat. Thank you. You make this show what it is. You do lob through a few grenades. We don't always agree. You don't always see eye to eye on everything, but it's always an absolute pleasure to have everyone along for the journey with us. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe week. Enjoy your gaming. Hope you get many hours of gaming time in and get to play catch up on some of your backlog. And until the next one, we'll see you then. Goodbye.